It's been almost a year since the Nigeria Startup Act 2022 was passed into law to support the growth of the tech startup ecosystem and harness the potential of our digital economy through co-created regulations. But almost a year down the line, how far have we gone with its implementation? Grace Oluchi, the co-founder and executive director at Climate Action Africa, joins me to discuss this further.
Firstly, I would like to say that the Nigerian Startup Act, in my personal opinion, I think it's a very balanced policy and a very balanced act just because of how it was led. One, it was people-driven and evidence-driven. It was co-created by a whole community that makes up the startup ecosystem. This is hubs, universities, research institutions, and the startups themselves. And just because we were able to, galvanize across the different geopolitical zones and states and had regional consultations that led into the national bill, I think it is really balanced and it's a true reflection of what it means when democracy and governance is at work. And we see that power of the people even in some of the tenets of this act. For example, how the National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship is formed, the people on the board and the people on the council, and just generally, we see how it really speaks to the pain points of the ecosystem. So we're really happy about that. Thank you.
How much of the initial zeal is still supporting the implementation of the Act?
So again, just because there are different stakeholders, the temperature is different from different sides of the aisle. And also we look at the fact that we just left an election cycle, campaigns and all of that. So from the public sector side, it was a bit, the zeal kind of reduced just because of change of administration. However, speaking again to that balance, the council and the secretariat that is supposed to be pushing the implementation of this bill has private sector and ecosystem people on it. And they have continuously pushed for the implementation regardless of what was happening in the country. And we are hopeful that the zeal is going to continue and is going to grow just because we are seeing a trend of people who were parts of the formation, the formation process of this bill, of this act, and also people who are in the ecosystem coming into the corridors of power. So we're really excited and we know that this deal is going to grow. For example, we have Dr. Bosu Tijani, who is one of the founding members and strong pillars of the ecosystem, who is now federal minister for communications and digital economy. We have Chukwuemeka Fred, who was always also part of the ecosystem in Anambra State. We have Daniel Chinagozi. We have even the commissioner in Ekiti State. People who have been part of the ecosystem for years from a private sector side have now had the opportunity to cross carpet into public sector. So we are really hopeful to see how this will affect the implementation, and it's already driving a lot of excitement in the ecosystem. So we're really zealous about getting this implemented. Yes.
Now, apart from signing the NSA into law, which of course is a step in the right direction, how can we fast track its implementation? Because it seems there's a stall somewhere.
Yes, I would say yes. There's a stall somewhere just because of change of administration, like I'd mentioned, and with all things policy, again, and with all things government, there's always a little pulling of the feet and so much bureaucracy that has to happen. But then if we look at the statistics, we see that Statista has said that there are about 3,360 startups in Nigeria. The Innovation Support Network has counted about 500 hubs in their last enumeration, and we have a highly youthful population. And these are the people that the Act was co-created for. And therefore, we know that there's going to be a lot of pressure to push. So despite the fact that there was a stall due to change of administration, we know that that is going to change. And it is really going to come down to implementation and adoption at state level. That's where it's going to come down to. And which is why we feel like to fast track it, there needs to be a reverse of the process, which is, for example, we did everything, we collected regional consultations from states and pushed it up to federal, and we have the law enacted. The same thing has to happen now in reverse, which is people and ecosystem stakeholders within the states have to start organizing again to push to apply that internal pressure to the state houses and to their governors and to their commissioners to ensure that this bill is domesticated. I feel like just because of the nature of the bill, the process of domestication as well has to be different. And I'm really excited about the numbers that we see in the ecosystem. And we know that this pressure is going to, fast track the implementation is going to fast track the implementation at subnational levels, because that's what it really comes down to.
Now, talking about domesticating the act, some states have already indicated interest, and they are also making efforts to do that. For example, Lagos and I think Kaduna State. But is there a framework they're expected to work with?
Oh yes, there is. There is a framework. So I did a little bit of consulting with Anambra State government, and one of the key things that I was personally pushing for was the domestication of this act, and they have indicated interest in domesticating this as well. And the first thing that I would tell any player in the state that wants to domesticate is just reach out to the NSA Secretariat. Reach out especially and ask for Tracy Okoro, because she is the lead for state adoption and domestication, and she has a framework to tell you how the consultations has to happen at state level, the first reviews and second reviews, because once the state starts to domesticate, they have to send their revised versions to the Secretariat, and Tracy will be in charge of it. Go to the website, the information is there, reach out. I know the Secretariat, especially those who are from the ecosystem, are very eager about state domestication, so they are always happy to help, and they have a whole lot of resources to share with us. Thank you.
Right, the Secretariat is, on ground to ensure that all parties involved, all states rather, willing to domesticate the act, they have everything that they need to work with. But let's assume we're able to achieve domestication in most of the states, if not all. Is that going to be enough?
No, it's not. It's not going to be enough. Because like with all things, it's one thing to pass an act, it's another thing to implement it. We've seen this with various different acts. A very good example I think I should share now is the Disability Act, Discriminations Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act of 2018. We are at the end of the 5-year moratorium period that was given to organizations and to governments to ensure that infrastructures in states are accessible and inclusive for persons with disabilities, but we have not seen that happen in the way that we were expecting it to. Until date, we have about 16 states that have not implemented that act. So it's the same thing that should happen here. Domesticating it at state level is not enough. We need the implementation of it, and the act has to be a living, breathing document just because of the sector that it's targeting. Tech is forever changing, which means this cannot just be another act that we put on the shelf for another 30 years. It has to constantly be revised. We have to look at what the trends are, what is changing in the ecosystem, and we have to push for the act to be updated, to be changed in whatever way, and for implementation to happen.
Well, Grace Oluchi, co-founder and executive director at Climate Action Africa. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for joining us on Tech Trends.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.